It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Passengers are warned of delays and cancellations as Airbus aircraft face being grounded because of a software problem.
Airbus identified that there is a potential for some software challenges in relating to solar flares in a very specific set of circumstances.
Also tonight, Downing Street denies claims that the Chancellor deliberately misled people about the state of the nation's finances ahead of the budget. French officials say they'll start intercepting suspected migrants' boats in the English Channel. Plus, a furious response from campaigners after experts rule out a nationwide screening programme for prostate cancer. President Zelensky's chief of staff resigns after his home is searched in an anti-corruption investigation. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news, and airlines are warning of delays and cancellations because of a software issue affecting Airbus planes around the world. The manufacturer says solar radiation may corrupt data critical to the functioning of flight controls on the A320 family of aircraft, and that affected planes will need to be updated. Let's bring in our correspondent Emma Birchley, who's been following this story. Emma, what do we know so far?
Well, we know that this is a precautionary action, but it's an action which is necessary. There are around 6,500 of these Airbus A320 aircraft around the world that are thought to be affected. And this all has come about because of an incident which occurred on October the 30th. A JetBlue aircraft heading from Cancun in Mexico to Newark in New Jersey. It had to divert to Tampa in Florida after a sharp loss of altitude, and that resulted in several people being hurt. Now, what followed was an immediate investigation, and where we are at now is a result of the analysis of data from that flight, a software update now required, which takes around 2-3 hours. Tim Johnson from the Civil Aviation Authority explained what happened.
Airbus identified that there is a potential for some software challenges in relating to solar flares in a very specific set of circumstances. So that's what they've identified. They spoke to the regulator, read about it, and the maintenance, this precautionary maintenance that will be put in place over the kind of coming days will address that issue. And our expectation at the moment is it's likely to be a matter of days at this point. The airlines will be communicating directly with kind of passengers, in the event of a disruption through that period.
And the message from Heathrow is that actually there's no disruption. Gatwick saying a limited number of airlines have been impacted. We've heard from Wizz Air that have said some flights will be disrupted over the weekend, but the work has already been scheduled. Aer Lingus too, a limited number of flights impacted. They're taking immediate steps to deal with the problem. EasyJet saying there will be some disruption, that they are contacting passengers who will be affected. And British Airways have 3 of these flights and they're being sorted overnight, so no disruption there. So that's the UK picture, but it's a global issue. And actually, a Colombian airline, Avianca, they have 70% of their fleet made up of these Airbus aircraft, and they've closed ticket sales for 10 days while they make these software updates. We know Air India too saying that there will be some delays. So certainly in the UK, airlines saying, well, we will contact passengers, but that's not across the board. So the best advice, to be sure, is contact your airline and check whether your flight has been affected.
Emma, thank you for that. Well, the issue with the Airbus aircraft coincides with the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States, with millions of people travelling around the country. Let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. And David, we know that American Airlines has quite a larger fleet of the A320, 480. This has the potential for huge disruption, doesn't it?
Well, the timing really could not be worse. Thanksgiving, which fell just yesterday, is the busiest travel holiday of the year in the United States. Some 6 million people scheduled to travel over the course of a few days. We know the issue arose on that JetBlue flight from Mexico to New Jersey, but on this side of the Atlantic, the airline most affected is American. Delta, for example, is grounding fewer than 50 of its flights, but American has a fleet of 480 Airbus A320s. They say they've no record of this issue arising on any of them, but have identified that 340 of those aircraft require a software replacement. The airline also says they had anticipated an order to ground and that the work had already begun, and so they expect it to be completed by tomorrow morning. So they are anticipating minimal disruption and asking passengers to be patient and to recognise that passenger safety is their priority. I think it is important to remind people, of course, that the United States is the world's busiest aviation market, according to the Federal Aviation Administration. Air traffic controllers in this country handle 44,000 flights. That's 3 million passengers every single day. And while Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has been more focused recently on a campaign to restore what he calls airline civility, how people should dress and behave on board, tragedies like the passenger jet crash into the Potomac in Washington earlier this year with the loss of 67 lives has raised the concerns about safety, and this issue isn't going to do anything to address those concerns.
Indeed, David, thank you very much for the moment. Well, to other news now, and Downing Street has denied claims that the Chancellor deliberately misled the public and the markets about the state of the nation's finances in the lead-up to the budget. The Conservatives say Rachel Reeves exaggerated the scale of the black hole in the nation's finances so she could raise taxes and spending on welfare. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen joins us live from Downing Street. So, Tamara, then, the accusation that the Chancellor has been economical, not with the budget, but with the truth.
That's right. Significant accusations being thrown at Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, tonight, ahead of this week's budget, in which, of course, she raised taxes by £26 billion. You'll remember in the run-up to that budget, there was all these dire briefings coming from the Treasury that there was going to be a black hole in the public finances that need to be filled to the tune of £20 to £30 billion. The Chancellor gave a dawn press conference talking about the difficult choices and how everyone would have to pay more, seeming to be paving the way for an income tax rise, the first in 50 years, before they decided to change course. But it's now emerged that the forecast she received, the private forecast from the OBR, the Budget for Office for Budget Responsibility, actually told quite a different story, and those have been made public today. It's emerged that back in mid-September, the Chancellor was told, and the OBR have published this letter today, that the forecasts were actually looking a lot better than expected. And by the end of October, not only was there not a black hole, there was actually a small surplus. So why were there these dire warnings? Well, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, has said Rachel Reeves lied to the public in order to justify higher welfare spending. And even independent economists have said it's baffling why there was this chaotic run-up to the budget if they in fact knew that the forecasts showed they had plenty more wiggle room than expected. Now, Downing Street deny that Rachel Reeves misled the public. They say they don't accept that. And the Prime Minister's spokesman said that the Chancellor set out the choices and her decisions and the reasons for them at the budget.
And tomorrow, meanwhile, France has today agreed to start intercepting small boats in the Channel.
Yes, is there a glimmer of hope for stopping the boats? The French have changed policy after pressure from the Prime Minister. This is my report. A summer day and an overloaded boat with dozens of people crossing the Channel. French border force looking on, but not intervening. Even when the boat makes a surprise detour and 4 people, suspected of being the smugglers, return to shore and are only briefly questioned. But is the tide turning? Today, the French Maritime Police told Sky News, in order to protect human life and fight against smugglers, the Maritime Gendarmerie will soon be able to carry out control and intervention operations at sea on vessels suspected of being taxi boats. The government has been frustrated by the failure to tackle boats once they're already at sea, despite paying French authorities some £500 million over the years. But there are big questions about how this might work, including whether boats can be stopped with people on them, including women and children, given the risk that someone could be harmed. This former head of the UK Border Force is sceptical.
I'm afraid I'm a little bit pessimistic that it's actually going to happen because we've heard this before. The real question is, have the French police got the will and desire to do this? Have they got the operational orders and the legislation to do it? And have they got the resources? Because, there are very significant numbers of young men, migrants, on those beaches now that can be quite hostile.
Keir Starmer has been pressing this issue with President Macron. French newspaper Le Monde has seen a letter the Prime Minister wrote to him offering significant extra funding to deploy these tactics and admitting there is no effective deterrent in the Channel. The Prime Minister's spokesman said, "We do not comment on leaks. The Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron are in close contact and our cooperation over the issue is ongoing. We have asked the French to review maritime rules." With small boat crossings showing no signs of slowing down and asylum applications soaring up the political agenda, the government will be hoping this change in policy could just move the dial. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
There's been an angry reaction from campaigners to new official advice ruling out a national screening programme for prostate cancer. Experts told ministers this afternoon that screening should not be made routinely available for the vast majority of men in the UK, despite research indicating that the measure could prevent 1,500 deaths a year. Sir Chris Hoy, who has terminal prostate cancer, said he was extremely disappointed and saddened by the recommendation. But the government's advisers say they're concerned that a nationwide screening programme could do more harm than good. Our health correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
I'm still shocked. There's no way I was ever going to say that was going to get turned down.
For Dave, the decision by government advisers not to back prostate cancer screening hurts. Black men are at twice the average risk of a disease that kills 12,000 men a year. His twin brother was diagnosed too late and is now seriously ill. Dave was more fortunate. His disease was picked up before it spread. He does all he can, including cycling almost 200 miles from Shrewsbury Town Football Club to London to raise awareness that early detection saves lives.
If Pete had been tested 10 years ago, he would have no doubt been found out that he had prostate cancer and it would have probably been treatable. At the moment, because his reading was 3,600 and something, he's just living on borrowed time.
The National Screening Committee has said the PSA blood test is too unreliable to be used to screen all men in their 50s and 60s. And there isn't enough evidence to back NHS screening even in high-risk men, such as those with black ethnicity or who have a family history of prostate cancer. Instead, only those known to have an inherited mutation in a gene called BRCA, which increases the risk of cancer, would get tested for the disease.
Certainly the level of risk is an important factor, and if we can get better at knowing who is in those high-risk groups and whether those high-risk groups actually benefit more. With the BRCA gene, we do have evidence that not only do they have a higher incidence of cancer at a younger age, but they are also more likely to die of it.
Some doctors say the decision not to screen older black men is a scandal. They say the committee has misjudged the evidence.
It's very disappointing, fundamentally, because I think they have overstated the harms associated with PSA-based screening and understated the benefits. Black men have twice the risk of getting prostate cancer and twice the risk of dying from it. So there's a lot of fundamental inequality that they are going to allow to continue if this recommendation goes through, which I think is wrong.
Olympic champion Sir Chris Hoy, who has a family risk but was diagnosed only at a late stage, said he was disappointed by the draft recommendations. And former Prime Minister David Cameron, who revealed this week that his cancer was picked up early after testing, also called on the government to be bold and brave and allow more high-risk men to be screened.
Ultimately, it is the Health Secretary who will make the final call on screening. In a statement, Wes Streeting said, "I've always said I want to see screening in place for the most common cancer in men, provided this is backed by evidence." I want to change the NHS so it diagnoses earlier and treats faster. That aim will be balanced against the harms that wider screening could cause to men.
Dave hasn't given up hope that men like his brother could be saved in future. His message is simple. If you're at risk, get tested.
We're going to have another testing event here at the football club where I work. I think in March we'll have a prostate awareness game, hopefully, and just to get people, get that message out there. And it's so important to me. And when Pete isn't here anymore, I'll carry on and do what I can.
Thomas Moore, Sky News.
To Ukraine now, where President Zelensky's chief of staff has resigned after his home was searched by anti-corruption investigators. Andriy Yermak is a powerful figure in Ukraine and has been a key participant in the ongoing peace talks with the United States. Our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, reports from Kyiv.
Volodymyr Zelensky's right-hand man, lead Ukrainian negotiator on the international stage, and the second most powerful person in Ukraine. No more. Andriy Yermak quit hours after anti-corruption officials raided his home.
First, the President's Office of Ukraine will undergo a full reboot. Its head, Andriy Yermak, has tendered his resignation. I am grateful to Andriy for consistently presenting Ukraine's position at the negotiating table exactly as it ought to be presented. His stance has always been staunchly patriotic. However, I want to avoid any rumours or needless speculation.
It's the most significant departure from the president's inner circle since the start of Russia's full-scale war, and comes amid a major corruption scandal shaking the country. But speculation was doubtless fuelled by the raid on Yermak's home by anti-corruption officials.
It's not yet clear what investigators were looking for, but the probe comes after Ukraine's two main anti-corruption agencies revealed a plot related to contracts at the State Nuclear Energy Agency worth around $100 million in alleged kickbacks and laundered money.
Given his position of influence, Yermak has long been viewed with suspicion by anti-corruption campaigners, even though he's not been named as a suspect or charged with any crime.
I don't want him to be any part in Ukrainian government and in any part in international relationships and especially negotiations.
What do you say to people who worry that this anti-corruption scandal it's a big distraction for Zelensky and it means he can't focus on the war?
I would say that Ukraine is democracy. We are fighting the war with Russia not to build here a little Russia or Belarus.
With Yermak gone, the next question is whether Zelensky himself can survive this storm. The corruption scandal has caused outrage amongst ordinary Ukrainians, especially because it involves the energy sector. People here are suffering from power outages as Russia targets energy infrastructure.
I volunteer and support the armed forces of Ukraine, and I see how difficult fundraising has become. People donate from tiny salaries, from meagre pensions. And it makes me furious that officials are stealing millions.
As well as a volunteer, Olga is also a poet. I ask her to read a piece she wrote. It's about justice.
Though justice slumbers, silent, out of sight, lost somewhere in the cinders and the wreck, in times of war, when terror stalks the night, it is the one thing Ukraine must protect.
Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Kyiv.
Firefighters in Hong Kong say they found dozens more bodies as they continue to search a high-rise complex which was engulfed by a huge fire. At least 128 people are known to have died, with many more still unaccounted for. Anti-corruption officers have arrested 8 people in connection with renovation work taking place at the complex. Our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith, reports from Hong Kong.
What do you do? How do you spend your time when you've just lost everything you have? It is the unhappy dilemma for thousands today in Hong Kong. The silence was heavy as the families were let out from identifying their dead. a grim procession of grief. There are still an unknown number lying somewhere in there. Out here, the weight is unbearable. We meet Mr. Law, whose elderly parents lived 27 floors up. He knows they are probably dead.
They're my mum and dad. Why wouldn't I want to find them? I pray they're still alive. But even if they're dead, I just want to know the news. Just let me know if they're really gone. Then I won't be so nervous and panicked. I haven't been able to sleep at all, and I can't eat.
He has a question for Hong Kong's leader.
I want to ask John Lee, what are you actually doing? All you did was wander around and hold press conferences. What about us? I have no way of making inquiries.
There are more people here today, the needy spanning all ages. But there is a new wariness too, a sense they're on heightened alert. The key focus here is, of course, the plight of the survivors, and there is still this terrible grief, but there is a sense too that the mood is slightly shifting. There's a tension, an anxiety, even an anger, a quiet belief that perhaps Hong Kong's system has let its people down. There is fury aimed at the construction firm accused of cutting corners, but they are not the only target. Many here insist the authorities also battered away their concerns. Just listen to the levels of distrust.
There are many ongoing renovation projects. There have been problems with the building for decades, and the government knows it. In every case, there are criticisms, but the criticisms are always suppressed.
Do you believe that corruption has been involved here?
Absolutely.
Tensions boiled over amongst volunteers too. Some groups linked to the Beijing-backed government, accused of seizing control and the credit. In Hong Kong of old, there would likely have been vigils held here. But after China cracked down on democracy, now even grief cannot gather en masse. What's happening here is a human disaster, but the fallout could well be political. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News in Hong Kong.
An investigation is underway after Israeli forces were filmed killing 2 Palestinian men in the West Bank after they'd appeared to surrender. Palestinian officials say the men were executed in cold blood, but Israel's national security minister says those involved have his full backing. Our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons reports.
This is footage that has shocked many, and it starts with 2 men emerging from a building under the gaze of Israeli soldiers. The men raise their arms in surrender. They're kicked on the ground and then pushed back to the building. And then, with grim, calm precision, they are shot dead. Moments later, a digger is used to collapse part of the building on top of their bodies before the soldiers return to the debris and drag out one of the victims. Jenin is a city that has seen so many conflicts between Palestinians and Israelis, the tension and anger now renewed.
They have been killed in cold blood. They could have arrested them and not executed them. This is a heinous crime. It's disturbing and painful and frustrating for us.
The Israeli military is still in Jenin, demolishing buildings, arresting more people. But the anger over these killings has spread far beyond this city, raising profound questions.
The images that we're seeing are a microcosm of the larger violence in the West Bank. The Palestinian Authority has said it is a war crime. It certainly looks like that's the case. The issue is that there is a lack of credible investigations into any of these killings.
The Israeli military says it is transparent and will investigate, but many are dubious. Between 2018 and 2022, there were 219 cases launched against Israeli soldiers accused of killing Palestinians illegally in the West Bank. Of these, 107 were actually investigated, but only one led to an indictment and conviction, and the punishment was community service. The only reason we know about these killings is because they were filmed by a bystander, but that has led to international condemnation from human rights groups, from the United Nations and beyond. But here in Israel, there is an enduring respect for the military and a widespread feeling that soldiers should be immune from punishment and even investigation. Take this man, Israel's national security minister.
We need to put an end to this distorted procedure. When one of our fighters shoots a terrorist, they immediately take him for questioning. We need to stop this distorted procedure. We need to stop this perception. We are fighting enemies and murderers who want to rape women and burn babies.
But the impact of these images will run deep. Can Israel really convince the world that this was justified? Adam Parsons, Sky News, Jerusalem.
A man who killed a pensioner while stealing his bag containing a cottage pie and a box of cornflakes has been jailed for 23 years. Peter Augustine attacked 87-year-old John Mackey after he'd visited a grocery store in North London in May. The judge described Augustine as cowardly and said he'd shown no remorse. Two Romanian teenagers who were accused of attempting to rape a schoolgirl in an incident that led to racially motivated rioting in Northern Ireland have had their charges dropped. The case sparked several days of unrest in Ballymena and led to further outbreaks of violence in other parts of Northern Ireland. A fourth man has been charged in connection with last month's jewellery heist at the Louvre in Paris. Prosecutors say the 39-year-old is facing preliminary charges of robbery and conspiracy. The £77 million haul taken from the museum is still missing. The football associations of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have confirmed that they have submitted a joint bid to host the Women's World Cup in 2035. The bid includes 22 stadiums, 16 in England, 3 in Wales, 2 in Scotland and 1 in Northern Ireland. The Lionesses' record scorer, Ellen White, says if successful, it's hoped that the bid would bring record numbers of girls into the sport.
We've already seen what the women's game has projected, the trajectory of it in the last kind of 10, 15 years, the exposure, the amount of girls participating now, and especially since 2022, it's almost doubled in England, the amount of girls that are now playing football. So it'll be amazing for the exposure, the growth of the women's game worldwide, the amount of eyes that will be on, obviously, this tournament. So it'll be so special, amazing fan experience, the atmosphere, communities getting involved up and down the UK, and obviously, for players, they'll be history makers if they were to be part of this as well.
Ellen White there, hopeful. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the political commentator, Tim Montgomery, and Daily Mail columnist, Susie Boniface.
Daily Mirror.
Again. It's because you said that. Because you said Daily Mail. That's why it's popped up. Daily Mail. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing further reaction to the budget. This on the front of the Daily Mail. Liar Reeves must go now. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.
I love that. I love that.
You called it into being.